Hey guys, it's Tim Trish from Ethernet Blueprint. Now, Ubiquiti has done a really great job of creating some great routers and equipment for any home network. However, if you're new to the Ubiquiti world, it's probably a little bit overwhelming to choose which equipment is going to work right for you. So today I thought we'd take a little bit of a dive into their router selection, including a couple new players in the space, so you can get the features you want at the price you want without overspending. Let's get going. Now, if you like today's video, please consider following or liking the channel so YouTube can recommend it to other people. Also, I invite you to leave a comment below stating which router you like best. Is Ubiquiti doing a good job with their router selection? All right, so before we dive in, I just want to set the stage a little bit about which devices we're going to be talking about and which ones we're not going to be talking about. So all of the routers in today's video have a built-in controller in them and cannot be managed by a local controller or a third-party cloud-hosted controller. This means that we're not going to be talking about the UXG Lite or UXG Pro, which are typically geared towards MSPs who manage multiple sites and multiple customers and want to do it from a single pane of glass. Not that you can't have those options in your home, we're just not going to be discussing them in today's video. Secondly, we're not going to be talking about Ubiquiti's Dream Wall. And I know there's a lot of fans of the Dream Wall out there. I'm still kind of on the fence as to it, but basically this is Ubiquiti's all-in-one solution, which includes a Wi-Fi, controller, and a switch, all built in one, mounted on a wall. Now, while it does have the built-in controller aspect that we're talking about today, I feel it's designed for a very specific customer in very specific environments, and so we will not be using it as one of the things we're comparing it to. If you are interested in taking a look at it, please head out to the Ubiquiti store and do. It's actually kind of a neat device, but I think there's just some challenges that come with it. And last, I just want to point out that all of the routers we're talking about today are capable of doing VLANs and setting up firewall rules. So we won't specifically be calling that out as a benefit because they can all do it. All right, so let's get into the meat of the video. So today we're going to be talking about 4 specific routers with Ubiquiti. They are the Unifi Dream Router, the Unifi Express, the Unifi Cloud Ultra, which is a brand new player in the space, and the old trusty UDM Pro and UDM SE. Now, all of these routers bring a little bit of different pizzazz to the marketplace. They're all capable of certain things and not capable of other things. And so depending on your needs, it can maybe be a little bit difficult looking at all of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to dive into each one individually. We're going to talk about their strengths and weaknesses. And at the end, we'll kind of summarize our findings. And hopefully that'll help you decide, which one might work best in your home. Again, please leave comments. Let me know what I can do to help answer questions about them. And I'll certainly do my best to get those answered. All right, guys, so we're going to kick things off with the Unifi Express. Now, of all the devices we talk about, this one's probably deemed the most as the entry-level product because of some of the limitations it has. However, I will say for the price, you get a lot of great features, and this really would make a fantastic router for anybody wanting to get into the Ubiquiti ecosystem. So let's talk about a couple of the strengths here, and then we'll dive into a couple of the weaknesses. One thing that's really nice about this one is it does have built-in Wi-Fi 6. So it is doing Wi-Fi at the same time it's being a router and at the same time it's being a controller. You're going to see today that not all the routers that Ubiquiti has come out with does that. So that makes it really nice to sit in an office or somewhere in an open living space. Maybe that's where your modem is sitting. So it can be broadcasting Wi-Fi in the home. Now, another positive is it can do wireless meshing. So what does that even mean, right? It means that you could buy 2 of them, right? And they can talk to each other wirelessly. They'll actually be able to communicate wirelessly with each other and don't need a physical cable plugged in between them. Now, one of the unknown things maybe about Ubiquiti, or one of the less advertised things, is their Ubiquiti access points can mesh together wirelessly, and a lot of their devices can do this. So, but this is one of them. So I actually got my hands on a couple of these, and I buy all my own equipment from Ubiquiti to test. They didn't send me anything for free, but I did a couple videos on the speed testing and how well they did wirelessly. So if you'd like to see those, I'll put links down in the description for it. Again, a huge pro is the price. At 150 bucks, you really do get a lot of stuff. You don't get everything, but you get a lot of stuff, and they've done a good job of making it work. Now, as we talk about security features, because a lot of people like to move to Ubiquiti because they want the advanced security features. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, it can do VLANs, but it can also do VPN and traffic rules. So you can set certain things, limit Facebook and stuff like that in the router itself, which is really, really cool. And you're gonna get gigabit speeds with this. Not faster than gigabit, but gigabit speeds. And one thing I want to point out is that you get full speed even with all the security features that is built into this little lightweight equipment at all times. So a lot of times when you turn on security features, it slows down the router. It limits the throughput you can get because it has to inspect all that traffic. With this guy, you can actually get gigabit speeds even with the features turned on, which I think is really, really great, especially at that price point. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some of the downsides or weaknesses. However, I really don't look at them that way. I look at them as these are the things that make this an entry-level product. It is a great router, but it's important to know what it can't do. So as you'll see in the picture, there's only two ports. There's an internet port or your WAN port, and then there's a LAN port, which is to plug in all the devices in your home. Well, because it only has a single LAN port, typically devices like this are going to require a switch to also be bought so you can physically cable, the devices on your desk, for example, if this thing was sitting in your office. There just isn't many built-in ports. And a lot of that is because of its small form factor. It's only about yay big, so it's really not a very big device. It's very low power, but you can plug a switch into this, adopt that switch, and then be able to, extend your network to other areas of the house just fine. But because there's only a single internet port, it cannot do dual WAN. So you cannot plug in two internet providers to this device and have it do any sort of load balancing or failover. It's just not designed to do that. Now, this device can only run the network app, the Unifi network app. Now, what does that mean? You'll hear today on some of these other devices how they can do multiple things. Ubiquiti has multiple apps that can run on their devices. They can be a door controller system, a phone system, camera system. Cameras is probably the big one. And so one of the limitations of this device is it's only going to be a network controller. So if you are looking at Ubiquiti cameras, for example, you're going to need to purchase the NVR and have your cameras communicate with that, and then plug the NVR into the switch or whatever you plug off this. This can still be the router for that system. It just can't do the cameras also. It can only be a network controller. So you'd need some kind of cloud key or NVR or some other Unifi device that can do the Unifi Protect and run the Unifi Protect app to use their cameras. Now, if you're using a third-party camera system, maybe you have something completely different system out there, it's going to need to have its own NVR, and then it would just plug into the system. And again, this would continue to be your router, and that would be the camera system, and it would just physically plug into your switch. Now, probably one of the biggest limitations of this is that, and what keeps it in this smaller setup sort of area, is that it can only adopt up to 4 other Ubiquiti devices, which means you can have a switch and 3 APs, or 2 switches and 2 APs. We gotta remember, it is a device itself, and it is doing Wi-Fi, so it's counting as one of your Wi-Fi devices. That's probably what keeps it in this small setup category and why it's limited the way it is. But you got to remember, it's only 150 bucks. So you really are getting still a lot of good things for a small profit, or for a small price. And I'm just putting the 2.5 gig on there a little bit. Just wanted to, it's kind of a buzz thing right now. Everybody wants bigger, better, faster. I need 10 gig in my home. I would argue the case that most users, probably about 95% of you out there, really don't need 2.5 gig or 10 gig houses. Because you're just watching TV, you're streaming music on your Sonos system, you're maybe have a couple smart devices here, a smart thermostat or a doorbell system, things like that. You just don't need 2.5 gig or 10 gig or 5 gig to be able to run that. My house is a 1 gig house. I have probably 40 to 50 devices in my house, and I run on a gig network. It works just fine. I also don't have 3 gig of internet piped in my house. I have 250 megabytes, so again, it's really a big misconception as to needing all this crazy speed. This is limited at a gig, which I think is going to cover about 95% of you out there. It's the other limiting factors that may really drive your decision to go into a little bit more of an elevated product, which we're going to talk about next. All right, guys, as you can see, Unifi Express, great little system, packs a lot of punch for not a big price tag, great entry-level system into the Unifi ecosystem. But if you're looking for a little bit more horsepower, maybe some more features, you might want to consider just spending $50 extra and look at the Unifi Dream Router, also known as the UDR. Now, in my opinion, the UDR is kind of the next logical step up from the Express because of some of the great features and additional things it can do. However, I still lump it in with the entry-level system because of some of the limitations that we'll talk about here shortly. First and foremost, you can see it has built-in Wi-Fi 6. That makes it a really, really nice candidate, similarly to the Express, to sit in an office or in an open common space in your home because other devices can actually connect to it wirelessly, in addition to it being your network controller and your router. So that's really, really great. However, you'll notice that this has a 4-port gigabit switch on the back instead of just one like the Express has. And 2 of those ports will actually provide PoE power, which is super awesome if you want to run some cameras or something, which we'll get into in just a minute. Again, $50 more, not an expensive upgrade, which I think is awesome. It's priced right. I've deployed these many times as routers, and I think they work really, really great. Now, they are able to run additional apps. So, like I was talking about with the PoE ports, you can actually run up to 2 Unifi applications on this device, which means it can be your network controller and your camera system. It can run Unifi Protect on it as well, but you can only run 2. That's one of the limiting factors that we'll talk about here shortly. But that's really great. You can actually plug cameras into this thing or plug cameras into your network, and this can be your NVR. Take a Unifi doorbell, or maybe you have a bullet camera over your driveway. They can actually run off of this device. You do not need to buy a separate piece of hardware that can run Unifi Protect. This can do it as well. In addition to all that, you also get some additional security improvements. So it can do everything that the Express can, but in addition to that, it can run IDS and IPS. Now, those are intrusion detection system and intrusion prevention system. So it actually is looking at the traffic, identifying things that you want blocked, and it can actually block those automatically for you. And that's just something the Express can't do. So as you can see, for not a lot of money, you get a lot of benefits. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into some of the limitations or weaknesses of the UDR. Again, very great option, but it is an entry-level device, and we'll talk about why here in just a second. So first and foremost, no multi-gig WAN, no dual WAN, none of that stuff. This thing caps out at 1 gigabit per second as far as the speeds of it. You're not going to be able to do any 2.5 gig networking or anything like that. Again, I want to reiterate, I think for most users out there, that's going to be fine. Most households don't really need more than a gig, but obviously nobody has a crystal ball as to what's coming in the future. So just know that that is a limitation of this device. Now, huge benefit that it can be both a network controller and camera controller, for example, running Unifi Protect, running 2 apps, but it can only run 2 apps. Because of the limitations in the hardware, it just can't run everything as efficiently as, say, a UDM Pro or the UDM SE. So you are limited to only 2 of the apps at the same time, but it does give you some options. You can pick and choose which 2 you want it to be. One, of course, is going to be the network, and then the other one is whatever you choose. If you decide to use Unifi Protect, you are limited to just 4 cameras. This is really meant to not have you have a bad experience, right? Nobody wants to click on a camera to see what was going on or click on the doorbell to see who's at your door, and it takes 30 to 45 seconds for that camera to open up. So they've limited the amount of cameras that it can put on there so you have a good Protect experience, and I think it's a really good benefit. But as you get into larger camera systems, this guy is not going to be able to do that for you. You would need to buy additional hardware, maybe the NVR or something like that. And as it pertains to the SD card storage or to the storage, it uses an SD card. So a lot of people really hate that. There's no spinning disk or anything there. I don't know where they would put it anyway. So you can put into a minimum of 128 gig SD card and up to 1 terabyte to be able to record your storage for your doorbell and your 4 other cameras or whatever. So there is a limitation as to that, but at the same time, as an entry-level device, I think that's really nice that you can be able to do that with a $200 router. You also have to buy the SD card, obviously, so that would be an additional cost. But really, really pretty great, but yet a weakness or a limitation at the same time. Also, and I didn't list it in here, I probably should have, but If you have all the security features turned on, right, in IPS and IDS, and you're blocking a bunch of things, the maximum throughput on this is around 700 megabits per second. So you do throttle yourself down a little bit if you're turning on all the security features. Again, lack of horsepower, you're getting those features, but say if you have like a 250 megabit, internet speed, you're still gonna be able to maximize that, which is great. Also, as it pertains to the IDS and IPS, you can only turn on 11 of the 35 categories in this. So there is a limited IPS IDS in this. So you don't get everything, but you're going to get the main ones. And that is something that's probably a little bit of a limitation in here as well. But at the same time, it's still nice to be able to turn those on to make your network and all around, home more safe. So let's take a look at our next piece of equipment. All right, so the next router we're going to be talking about is the Unifi Cloud Gateway Ultra. This is a brand new device from Ubiquiti. It has not been out very long. Matter of fact, I haven't been able to get my hands on one because they always seem to be sold out very, very quickly. I'm very excited for this one, guys. I think anybody wanting to have some of the advanced features that you get in some of the UDM Pro and UDM Pro SE, at least on the networking side, you're going to be able to get with this at a very low price, and I'll explain what I mean by that here in just a second. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the benefits. All right, first and foremost, this has multi-gig WAN. So we've been talking about that as a limitation with some of the other devices that only cap out at a gig. This has a 2.5 gigabit WAN port on it, which means you can take advantage of those faster speeds if they're offered by your ISP. In addition to that, you can also assign one of the 4 LAN ports, they're gigabit LAN ports, as a secondary WAN. So you can set up failover, load balancing, special filtering to send certain kind of traffic out one port and other traffic out another port. Some very advanced routing features are built into this guy, which I think opens the door to a lot of really great things. Could be even used in a small office if you wanted to, because those are typically the scenarios where people have multiple WANs. The price, guys. Price is a huge pro to this device at 130 bucks. I can't even believe it's only priced that. They're really packing a lot of punch into this thing, but there are some limitations as to why it's priced that way, and we'll get to that here shortly. This also has IDS and IPS built into it, but unlike the UDR, this device has all the categories turned on, so you can actually fully feature everything that's in the UDM Pro and UDM SE is in here from an IDS IPS standpoint, so you get the full features from security. And if you turn everything on, even strict mode, you can still run at gigabit speeds, which I think is really, really great. Okay, so now let's move over into maybe some of the downsides to this device, weaknesses, if you will. When I think of this device, I really kind of see it as a mini UDM Pro, at least on the network side, and I'll explain kind of what I mean by that. First and foremost, there's no Wi-Fi built into this device. So unlike the other 2 candidates we've looked at, you're gonna not be able to connect to this thing from a wireless standpoint. This thing's really designed to kind of be running behind the scenes and have physical devices connected to them to be able to give you Wi-Fi or expand your network like with switches and whatnot. So it's really not designed to be an all-in-one like some of the other devices. Where this thing fits as kind of a mini UDM Pro is its lack of features from running other apps. This can only run network. And so you're not going to be able to do any cameras or run the Unifi Protect app in this device. Now, pros and cons of that. If that's not important to you, then this makes a really great device because they're taking all of the resources and all that extra horsepower that's built into it, and they're putting it 100% dedicated to the network space, which allows you to have a very nice and powerful router, but not very versatile. So it's not going to be able to handle or do some of those other things that you're going to get with some of the more expensive options. And I kind of just see that as a downside. I was a little bummed that it can't at least run the Protect app, or maybe they put an SD card in it, just similar to the UDR, but it just isn't the case. And so this is really just gonna be a routing only device, but at a higher level than some of the other devices we've seen. Okay guys, so if you guys know me on this channel, you guys know that I really do love the UDM Pro and UDM SE. They're kind of a go-to for me. They're going to be the most powerful of all the devices we talked about. And I'm not going to say more advanced. The interface is really the same, but the capabilities of these devices is going to be a little bit more expanded from what we've talked about previously. I think a lot of them, of the other devices, are sort of more of an entry-level device, where this is probably more of a small business device that you'd be using in your home. So let's talk about the pros here. You have a multi-gig WAN and LAN. So this is actually going to come with a 2.5 gigabit WAN port on it, like we talked about in some of the other devices, plus up to 10 gigabit LAN port on it. So really, really powerful from that standpoint, and being able to introduce those speeds. Now, generally, as discussed, most homes don't need those kind of speeds unless there's a very specific use case for it. However, it's there if you ever need to grow into, or you want to kind of do some kind of future proofing with your equipment. Like, I want this to last me a long time, and obviously none of us really know what's coming in the future. So this is a good box to do that with. You can run all the apps. So UDM is going to be able to allow you to run the multiple apps, the access, the telephone, camera system, and network, all at the same time, all simultaneously. There's just more hardware in this box that'll allow you to do that. From a camera standpoint, if you decide you want to run Protect, this actually has a hard drive bay built right into it. So we're not talking SD card on this. We're talking physical hard drive. You can put an 8 terabyte hard drive in it, whatever you want to put in, and be able to record your cameras right to this box. So it becomes your controller for everything, as well as your NVR at a larger capability. This is not limiting you to 4 cameras like some of the other ones. This, you can run more. However, what I will say is, once you start getting into larger camera deployments, 10, 11 cameras, or if you're using the high-end AI, real expensive cameras, this is going to have its limitations. I mean, it's really not designed to be an NVR per se. And if you want to put a lot of focus and emphasis in your home or small business on cameras, I would recommend getting the NVR from Ubiquiti that has Protect built right into it. And then you can have multiple drives and failover and all sorts of things built into it. This is really more for smaller scale deployments of cameras. So from a security standpoint, it's got all the IDS, IPS. It's going to be fully featured in the security world, kind of like we talked about with the Ultra. And another real benefit to it is there's a switch built into this. So one of the differences between the UDM Pro and the UDM Pro SE is the switch capability. So the UDM Pro just has a gigabit switch on it. The SE adds PoE. So for that extra, $150 or whatever it ends up being, you're getting a PoE switch added to your device, which is really, really nice. So my advice is if you plan on deploying cameras, go ahead and make the upgrade to the SE, because that's going to take less pressure off your switch. Or maybe you can even buy a smaller switch, because you can utilize the ports on the device itself to power your cameras, which I think is a huge benefit and a huge pro. It's a really, really great device. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of the weaknesses of the UDM Pro, UDM SE. There's not a lot of downside to it. Price, kinda. And I'll say kinda because for what you get for the money, you get a lot of value here. This thing can really do a lot. So yes, it's more expensive than the other options, but those other options are more entry-level options, which we'll talk about here shortly. But it's just one of those things where you do get a lot of value for the money. This is really still an inexpensive business grade device. So I put it as a downside only because of how it compares to the other ones. I do think you get a lot of value for this. The size is maybe a downside. This is really meant to kind of run behind the scenes. It's got a form factor that's meant to be mounted in a rack, which, doesn't fit every use case of people out there. We talked about earlier, setting devices on your desk. This makes a great office desk device. This does not. It just takes up too much space. It really wouldn't be designed for something like that. So size can sort of be a downside. It just kind of depends on your situation, your layout. There is limited PoE power. So if you decide to upgrade to the SE model, you're going to get part PoE ports and just a couple PoE Plus ports, which are typically required for Wi-Fi 6 devices and Wi-Fi 7. So, you're not going to be able to power as much on it. That's why I said previously, focus on cameras. Cameras in general, the Ubiquiti cameras, require less power to boot up and everything. This makes a really great device to power your cameras. I would focus on the switch to power your access points and the stuff that's doing more, networking in the space. And just as you compare it to the other devices, no built-in Wi-Fi. This is not going to do any Wi-Fi capabilities. It's just going to run your apps, be your controller, host all that, as well as be your NVR if you'd like it to be. So I don't know how much of a downside that really is. Like I say, I think these have a little bit more of a use case. So I listed it as a downside in case you're looking for a kind of an all-in-one encompassing device. This just isn't it. All right, so which one of these guys is best for you? Let's kind of summarize things a little bit, just kind of talk about some of the findings. I'm going to focus on the left side of the screen first, right? The Express and the UDR. So we talked about some of the limitations that are built into these, but some of the benefits is they are also performing the Wi-Fi function in your home. Other devices can connect to them. Really great for smaller deployments, I think. Like I said, I've deployed the UDR many times in homes and have had great luck with it. It just really is a nice device, even with the limitations built into it. And I played with the Expresses here. I really like them. The meshing capability is there if you need to extend, your network wirelessly in your house. You have that capability with these. However, on the limited side, these really are built for smaller deployments. They're not really made for these massive, big deployments. So if you want something you can grow into, you might have to focus a little bit more on the right side of the screen, and we'll talk about that here next. Okay, so if we shift our focus over to the right side of the screen, guys, we got your Ultra and your UDM Pro. I kind of lump this side together just because they are the more powerful of the network devices. Obviously, there's some limitations if you go with the Ultra, so I kind of called it a mini UDM Pro only because it just has more horsepower when it comes to running a network. It is a really nice and powerful, yet entry-priced router from Ubiquiti. So you get all the benefits of the VLANs and the security and stuff like that. You're just not going to be able to do some of the other things like no Wi-Fi, and it's not going to be able to run cameras. If you're just looking for it all, I need everything in a package in one. Guys, you really can't go wrong with the UDM Pro or SE. They are really awesome and do a great job. We're talking up to 10 gig on the LAN side, 2.5 gigabit on the WAN side. They can do cameras, multi-WAN, also, failover, load balancing. They just do it all. Plus, you can incorporate your camera system. So if you like Ubiquiti for a camera system, you like Unifi Protect, and I plan on doing some videos on Unifi Protect as well and kind of walk through some of that. I haven't done any on the channel yet, but I use them in my home. I really do like Unifi Protect. And so if that's something that's appealing to you, you really should look at the UDM Pro and UDM SE. However, like I mentioned, if you have a large deployment, maybe you have a big acreage or something, you plan on having 12, 13, 14 cameras, guys, that's probably going to be a little bit overkill for it. I think it'll do it, but you'll start seeing things like latency when you click to open a camera. It takes a while for that camera to open up. Nobody wants that. You don't want to wait when someone hits your doorbell for the image to pop up. You want it to be pretty fast. So they do have a limitation on how many you can go. I would usually try to stick around the 6 to 8 camera range, depending on how high end of Ubiquiti cameras you go. If you're just looking at like G5 bullets or something like that, I think you can do 8 or 9 pretty easy. However, but I wouldn't go much past that. So it just kind of depends on your deployment. And if you have specific questions about that, leave it below. We can talk about it. But like I said, these guys are just going to give it all to you. However, they are going to require you to have access points wired in the home and another methodology for getting your Wi-Fi delivered in your home. So they're really meant to kind of sit behind the scenes. So guys, I think there's a little bit of something for everybody. They've done a really great job of creating products that are needed in the space. They have some weird ones, but yet I think these 4 that we're talking about here right now are great contenders depending on where you are in your home network Unifi journey. All right, guys, that's going to do it for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Like I said, please like or follow. Leave comments, guys. I love responding to comments. I love being part of that conversation, answering questions. If we have to take it offline, we'll take it offline. I really enjoy that aspect of this world of YouTube, is getting to talk to you guys out there. So please leave comments. But like I said, tell me what's your favorite. What do you like? What do you dislike? Let's get some conversation starting, because the people who follow this channel really want to learn and kind of, they're just dipping their toe in the water of Unifi. So the more we can bring things up in the comments and help them out, the better off they're going to be. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys in a future video.